Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for a seminar I think you'll find very interesting. Let's start with what might be a very provocative statement. If you are a suburban prepper, most of what you've learned about prepping does not apply to you. Let me say that just one more time. If you are a suburban prepper, most of what you have learned about prepping does not apply to you. With that thought in mind, let's take a look at what constitutes a suburban prepper and what special challenges the suburban prepper might have. A very small percentage of the population are preppers. Many studies estimate that only 1% of the American population is truly prepared to survive the aftermath of a life-changing event. In real numbers, that means that here in the United States, there are about 3 million people prepared and about 315 million people not prepared. There are hundreds of books and manuals that focus on how to become a prepper. Traditional prepper books and manuals place the prepper in one of three types. Each type represents a different mindset and philosophy towards prepping. First, we have the survivalists. The survivalist type prepper have a set response to any crisis event. They will remove themselves from society. The survivalists consider themselves rugged individuals, and they're prepared to live by themselves. They envision themselves throwing on a backpack, picking up a rifle, and walking into the woods to survive off the land. The survivalists focus on primitive skills, and their backpacks include the bare necessities of equipment which will allow them to harvest the land. With minimum equipment and maximum skills and knowledge, they will be isolated and self-reliant. Next, we have the homesteaders. Homesteaders are self-reliant preppers who have moved away from the urban or suburban environments. While they may live on the very fringes of these environments, they're normally found in rural country settings. They're generally retired or engaged in a profession that will allow them to work and earn a living on or very close to their homestead. The homesteaders have gardens and raise animals to provide food. They have deep wells that will supply an almost endless source of water. And while they may be connected to the public utilities, they have backup solar and wind generators to produce power. So they basically have a means to live completely off the grid. Homesteaders have decided that no event would force them to evacuate the property. Leaving is not an option. Finally, we have the suburban preppers. The suburban preppers don't fit into the normal profile associated with preppers by the general population, but they are extremely important because inside this type we find the largest number of preppers in America today. The 2012 U.S. Census identified 497 locations referred to as urban areas. 71% of the American population now resides in one of these 497 urban areas. That's approximately 227 million people. By definition, the suburban prepper is a prepper whose very survival may be impacted by the populations of one of these urban areas. The suburban prepper lives in or close to urban areas because of work or because of family. The interesting fact is that the suburban prepper doesn't have to actually live in an urban area to be impacted. Let's take a look at some of the characteristics of the suburban prepper. Suburban preppers may be any age, but as younger people tend to have a sense of immortality and are really very rarely preppers, suburban preppers are usually middle-aged or older. The suburban prepper may be an individual, but they usually are part of a family unit with dependents. When we use this term dependents, what we're talking about are other members of the family unit that are dependent on the prepper for their survival. These dependents can be spouses, children or grandchildren, elderly parents or elderly family members, or even pets. Suburban preppers usually own their own homes or condos, but some do live in apartment communities. They usually work outside the home or they are retired. Suburban preppers are physically active, but about 70% of this prepper type take some form of prescription medications to maintain their health. They have some prepper knowledge and skills because they do attend class and have read information and books are on the internet. They make lists and they try to accumulate the supplies and equipment that they're told that they need. But this type of prepper has very little practical application because they've never really put their training or their equipment to use. For example, they may have a water filter, but on a daily basis they drink tap water. They may have a solar stove, but they cook every day in their kitchen ovens. They may have taken a first aid class to teach them how to suture a wound, but they've never really been involved with a traumatic medical situation. Because the suburban prepper usually has dependents, for the suburban prepper, the safety and continuity of the family unit is paramount. A plan that places any of the family members at risk will not be continued. Suburban preppers will always sacrifice self-reliance for the safety of their family members, and they will never leave a dependent behind. If a dependent's safety is threatened, they will choose to enter government-run camps and shelters despite all the associated risks, and they'll do this just to save their dependents' lives. Population density of the urban areas is the greatest threat facing all suburban preppers today. For the first time in the history of the United States, there are more people living in urban areas than in the rural areas. Supporting the population of these areas with essential food, water, and fuel, basically essential supplies, is impossible without continuous resupply. The breakdown of the rule of law and complete chaos will usually occur within 72 hours of any major crisis event that disrupts this continuous resupply. With the unavailability of essential supplies, unprepared people always respond the same way: panic, hysteria, looting, theft, and even murder. We said earlier that suburban preppers may be affected by the population of urban areas even if they don't live directly in these areas. This is because during a widespread crisis event, when essential supplies are not available, the population of an urban area will evacuate. So, how does an urban area evacuation take place? What exactly does 1 million people coming down the road look like? There are no modern-day examples of how a suburban area will evacuate. The most modern examples that we have took place during World War II with the German invasion of France and the Allied invasion of Germany. Now, one might think that during these evacuations of major cities, the refugees evacuated in a linear line along roadways, and that survivors not living on the roadways were safe. However, that was never the case. With the overwhelming number of people involved in these evacuations, numbering in the millions, the leading edge of the evacuation consumed all the essential supplies of food, water, and fuel. Because the leading edge consumed these essential supplies, those behind the leading edge were forced to spread out along the side of the roadways. These masses spread out usually for about 10 to 15 miles in the shape of a triangle on each side of every roadway that was used for evacuation. At every crossroad, the leading edge split and spread out in both directions along the crossroad, with the same 10 to 15 mile triangular shape on both sides of the roadway. The evacuees consumed every essential supply they found. After 72 hours, these evacuees and their families were starving to death. Many times, these evacuees reverted to their animal-like instincts when these supplies were actually located. And the accounts of some of the actions that were taken to steal and pilfer these supplies were actually horrifying. One very important characteristic observed during all of the evacuations was that the evacuation never reversed direction. The evacuees knew that all the essential supplies behind them were depleted, so they continued moving away from the crisis event in all directions. The second important characteristic was that the goal of all of these evacuations was to get away from the crisis event. This meant that the evacuations continued until the evacuees no longer felt threatened or the essential supplies ran out. We've been talking about a crisis event, so let's take a look at the structure of what we term a crisis event. A crisis is an event that is expected to lead to an emergency or a disaster. There's no difference in scale. It can affect an individual or it can affect an entire community. If the crisis event is localized and can be handled by the local first responders, then it's called an emergency. If the event is widespread and overwhelms the local first responders, then it's called a disaster. There is a specific timeline to a crisis event, and this can be broken down into 3 distinct stages. These stages are the initial, the extended, and the sustained stages. The initial stage takes place during the first 72 hours of the event. The extended stage is that period of 30 days after the initial stage, and finally the sustained stage is all that time after the extended stage. The psychological response to any crisis event always follows the 5 stages of grief. During the first 72 hours of the initial stage, survivors will go through the first 2 stages of grief, which are denial and anger. During the 30-day extended stage, the survivors go through the next 2 stages of grief, bargaining and depression. And finally, during the sustained stage of any crisis event, the survivors reach the last stage of grief, which is acceptance. Now, the goal of any survival plan is to allow survival to the sustained stage. And this is basically where the survivors can accept the permanent changes to their lives that have taken place. To do this, a plan must allow the prepper to survive through the initial and the extended stages, basically the first 33 days following any crisis event. The first decision in response to any emergency or disaster is always the same. Do I bug in or do I bug out? Basically, do I leave or do I stay? The answer to this question is based on the desired outcome. The reason I say desired outcome is because we can look at just one event, Hurricane Katrina, to see examples of a variety of outcomes. Anyone can bug in. All they have to do is just sit where they are and wait for help to arrive. The internet is full of pictures of Hurricane Katrina survivors sitting on their home rooftops waving a "Help Us" sign while floodwaters poured out the second floor windows. Similarly, anyone can bug out just by putting on their coat and walking away or jumping in their car and driving away. The internet is full of pictures of Hurricane Katrina survivors pushing shopping carts down flooded roadways and thousands of vehicles sitting by the side of the interstate out of fuel. We could look at these 2 examples and say that these people in fact did bug in or bug out, but did they achieve a desired outcome? Traditional prepper manuals treat the bug in and bug out plans as 2 separate entities. These plans are usually introduced in separate chapters of the books. The bug in chapter will have extensive lists of supplies and equipment, and will also have extensive lists of suggested skills. Preppers many times have to devise inventive ways to store all the suggested supplies in their homes. However, if you look at the chapter on bugging out, you'll see that it limits the prepper to those supplies that can be carried in a bug out bag or by hand. Comparing the 2 lists of equipment and supplies, one that requires the space of an entire house and the other that fits in the space of the trunk of a car, is very confusing. From reading these books, suburban preppers might surmise that in a bug out scenario, they're supposed to just walk away and leave all those great bug-in supplies at home. Our model is based on one overriding premise, and that overriding premise will help the suburban prepper become prepared. This premise, simply stated, is if the suburban prepper is prepared to bug out, then the suburban prepper is prepared to bug in. Let me say that again because it is the basis for the rest of our discussion. If the suburban prepper is prepared to bug out, then the suburban prepper is prepared to bug in. Suburban preppers must focus on preparing to bug out. The key to this focus will be to develop a survival plan. The suburban prepper's first thought during a crisis event will be to bug in. This is because there are more scenarios likely to be survived with a bug-in plan, and because a bug-in plan is physically and psychologically easier for them and their family members to go through. However, bugging in without a bug-out option is not a plan. At the same time, bugging out with no plan at all will do nothing more than make the suburban prepper a refugee. The decision to bug out is usually not a matter of choice. In fact, the decision to bug out or bug in is very dynamic and may change several times during a developing crisis event. The suburban prepper's survival plan must consider the following. The first consideration is that the chance of a bug-in plan succeeding in a suburban environment is very remote. The dangers that threaten suburban preppers during any crisis event can multiply exponentially, and they do this because of the very close proximity to people who cannot help themselves. During a crisis event, even good people panic. If your plan is to bunker down in a suburban environment, you will probably be found out. Roving gangs will give the non-preppers the ability to overcome the preppers. You may be able to defend yourself, your family, and your property from the first comers, but the ones watching will probably devise a plan to get you, especially if you have something of value. The overall thought is that the suburban prepper defending themselves will likely run out of bullets before they run out of people to shoot. The next consideration is that the suburban prepper without a bug-out option will eventually be forced to relocate to government-run camps. These FEMA camps were built in every state after the failure of the government's response during the Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Sandy disasters. Families with children, elderly members, or pets with no means to bug out will welcome these camps, and they'll welcome all the associated risks as a solution better than remaining sheltered in place. Entire families will move into these government-run camps before they allow their children, elderly members, or even their pets to die. Another consideration is that a walking bug-out from a suburban environment for a family unit with children or pets, mature or elderly family members, or out-of-condition preppers will not work. Suburban preppers can't just walk away from the danger. There are two limiting factors to why they can't do that, and these limiting factors are distance and time. The large geographic size of modern urban and suburban cities require these preppers to travel multiple miles before even leaving the city confines. In many cases, the trip out of the suburbs might exceed 30 miles. A walking trip out of the suburbs for a family unit, mature or out-of-condition prepper, may take multiple days. Suburban preppers may exhaust the supplies in their bug-out bags before even leaving the suburbs. These large distances will also cause fatigue. A family with children, mature or out-of-condition preppers, might be able to walk 10 to 12 miles in a day, but they probably can't sustain this for a great number of days. The suburban prepper or their family unit may become exhausted, and they'll have to take rest days before even leaving the suburbs. Many family members in a suburban unit may not be physically able to carry their own supplies. This will require that other capable family members carry all the required supplies for the entire group. The survival plan must also allow the prepper to get out in front of the evacuation with supplies and with equipment. For the suburban prepper, the decision when to bug out may make the difference between life and death. Now, why is that? Well, the main reason this decision is so critical to this prepper type is that the suburban prepper is going to bug out by vehicle. Yes, they've all seen the pictures of the traffic jams and the vehicles stranded by the side of the road. They've all read the survival manuals, and they've listened to the conventional wisdom which says trying to drive away from a crisis is foolish. And it's foolish because you might get caught in the traffic jam, your vehicle might break down, or you might run out of gas. All of these are distinct possibilities. But the fact remains that many millions of preppers have and will use their vehicles to get away from danger. The survival plan must also accomplish three other goals. The survivor plan must allow the prepper to be self-reliant through the extended stage. That is, to have equipment and supplies for the 33 days following the crisis event. The survival plan must also allow the prepper to travel to or return back to an area of operation to recover and live off cash supplies. And finally, the survivor plan must answer the how to and when to critical bug out decisions. The first question for a suburban prepper is how to bug out. For the suburban prepper, the solution is the use of a survival trailer. The best analogy for a survival trailer is that of a lifeboat. A lifeboat is not designed for long-term survival, but it does allow the survivor to get off the sinking ship and to get to safety. A survival trailer is a small enclosed cargo trailer that can be towed by a small SUV or a van. There are several reasons a survival trailer is essential to any suburban prepper plan. The supplies contained in the survival trailer can be used in any scenario. They can be used to bug in, they can be used to bug out locally, or they can be used to bug out hundreds or even thousands of miles away. The characteristics of a survival trailer differ greatly from an RV trailer in many respects. A survival trailer's small size eliminates the need for a heavy-duty, specialized tow vehicle that's required to tow many RV trailers. Its small size allows it to be moved short distances by hand, so you can easily move all of the essential supplies at one time. Saving all of the equipment and the supplies may be as simply moving the survival trailer into the driveway or moving the survival trailer into the street in front of your house. The cost of a survival trailer is small when compared to the costs associated with an RV trailer. A survival trailer can be stored in a standard residential garage. This storage provides 4 very important advantages. Storing your trailer in a standard residential garage means it's always at your home. It's always sheltered and always preloaded with equipment and supplies, which makes it ready at a moment's notice. The time required to retrieve items on a bug out packing list, pack your vehicle, and start your bug out may be the difference in avoiding the masses of survivors evacuating the event. Storing your trailer in a standard residential garage also allows for operational security, that's OPSEC, in keeping your supplies out of public view. It also allows compliance with homeowners association and city zoning rules for storing items outside, and it eliminates the expense of RV storage at a special or separate facility. For those survivor preppers living in apartment communities, the survival trailer may be stored in a nearby enclosed storage unit. And if they do that, they'll still enjoy all of the advantages of garage storage. A survival trailer is nondescript, and it does not advertise its contents. RV trailers are big targets for the unprepared masses during a crisis event. Most people have a general knowledge of what might be inside an RV, but a small enclosed trailer can easily be mistaken for a lawn service trailer, and it will be viewed as having items of little or no value inside. A survival trailer will also allow you to conceal and secure firearms, ammunition, and other weapons. It will allow you to carry multiple types of firearms and multiple types of ammunition, and this might be very valuable at a remote bug-out location. Suburban preppers leaving in vehicles may get stopped in large traffic jams. A vehicle and survivor trailer combo can be parked to wait out a traffic jam, and with the survival trailer, they'll still have all their supplies and equipment. They'll also have the safety of the vehicle so that they can maintain themselves by the side of the road. The bug-out option should be exercised before the mass exodus of survivors takes place, but if that's not the case, the prepper can actually wait by the side of the road for the lull between the waves of evacuees and then continue their bug-out. Spending the night in a vehicle by the side of the road is much better than spending the night in a tent by the side of the road. The vehicle provides security because somebody has to literally break in to gain access, and of course this will alert the prepper to the danger. A vehicle provides protection from inclement weather that might injure children or elderly family members, and no matter how hard it's raining outside, The family unit will be dry and somewhat comfortable inside a vehicle. Survival trailer also allows transportation of large quantities of concealed tow vehicle fuel. This tow vehicle fuel may allow travel for hundreds of miles. The survival trailer can be used to transport bug-out bags and can also be used to transport alternate forms of transportation, such as a small motorcycle, bicycle, or even a small boat. As a last resort, with these bug-out bags or alternate forms of transportation, if the vehicle becomes disabled, a walking bug-out can begin at that point. See, it doesn't really matter where a walking bug-out begins. It can begin at the prepper's home, it can begin at the prepper's work, or it can begin 10 miles down the road. Even if a trailer is used to only travel 10 miles, it's 10 miles that the suburban prepper doesn't have to walk. Finally, we can put together all we know about the threats for the suburban prepper and the nature of an urban area evacuation to develop a master strategy. This strategy is very simple. The suburban prepper will use the survival trailer to transport equipment and supplies away from the crisis event. These supplies of equipment and tools in the survival trailer will be used to survive during the initial and extended stages. They can be used either at a designated bug-out location or constantly mobile and on the move throughout the crisis event. Once the mass evacuation has passed through the prepper's bug-in location, the prepper will return to the bug-in location. They'll use the equipment in the trailer to locate and dig up cache supplies, and then of course develop a new plan for survival through the sustained stage. Even if the prepper returns to a home that is completely destroyed, if the home is completely burned to the ground in a fire, if a flood takes the home completely away, if there is damage because of civil unrest, or if there's damage because of looting, they can go to this bug-in location, dig up their cache supplies, set up their survival trailer on the existing foundation that's left, and can begin surviving throughout the sustained stage. This is a perfect solution for suburban preppers. The next question that needs to be answered for the suburban prepper is when to bug out. Your BIBO number is a workbook that provides a numerical value for when the suburban prepper should bug out. Your BIBO number as a workbook takes a look at a variety of categories and allows you to actually score your preparedness. These categories examine aspects of your personal attributes, equipment and supplies, geographic location, and the type of event that's taking place. Some of the categories have scores that can be controlled by your actions. If you purchase a new water filter, take a first aid class, or join an online prepping forum, your preparedness score will change. Some of the categories have scores that are beyond your control. Lose your job, develop a health issue, or live in the projected path of a Category 5 hurricane, and your score will also change. Each category is discussed in a separate chapter of the book, and there's actually 73 chapters in your BIBO number workbook. The chapter begins with an explanation of why the category is important, and it gives an explanation of what should be done to mitigate any hazards in that category. Below this explanation is a way for you to score how prepared you are in each category. Each score is based on a change in the overall importance to your bug-in or bug-out decision. Each category allows you to give yourself a numerical score between 1 and 12. All categories do not affect your bug-out decision the same. For example, in the equipment and supplies category, not having all of the recommended documents will not affect your decision as much as not having all of the recommended supply of food. Using the list of categories and the scores you assign yourself, you will calculate two BIBO numbers. The first number tells you how prepared you are to bug out. This is called your Personal Readiness Index. The second number tells you how dangerous the crisis event is. This is called the Threat Index. Calculating the Personal Readiness Index before an event takes place provides you with an indication of how prepared you are to bug out. Hopefully, as you go through the process of calculating your personal readiness index, you're going to recognize categories of preparedness that you should improve. Your goal is to attain a high personal readiness index, indicating that you are prepared to bug out. Because as I've said a few times already, if you are prepared to bug out, you are prepared to bug in. As the crisis event progresses, you're going to calculate your threat index based on the information that's at hand. Calculating your threat index during an event provides you an indication of the severity of the danger of that event. By comparing the personal readiness index and the threat index, you're going to get a recommendation as to whether you should bug in or bug out. Now, just as a side note, please don't misconstrue this information to think that if your personal readiness index is very low, that you cannot bug out. That's not the purpose of the personal readiness index. Anyone can bug out at any time with little to no preparation. Just jump in your car and go. This type of bug out has occurred millions of times during past disasters, but not being prepared to bug out has many times ended poorly. Let's take a look at some of the categories and see how the scores in these categories will affect your personal readiness index. Now, we don't have time to really discuss during this webinar all of the categories, but I'm going to use some of them to demonstrate the process. It may be a little difficult to follow this discussion without actually having a workbook for reference, so I'm going to keep the discussion kind of general in nature, but I just want to give you an idea of what it's like to actually use this workbook to calculate both your personal readiness and your threat index. Categories that are similar in nature are listed in groups. Now, there are three groups that have categories that you're going to use to determine your personal readiness index prior to the crisis event taking place. These groups are named the primary, physical attributes, and equipment and supplies. The goal is to use the information provided to adjust your score in each category to attain the highest personal readiness index. It's actually the tabulation index for the categories that will be scored to calculate your personal readiness index. You can see that this is a list of all the categories and a place to the right of the category for you to score yourself in each category. Once you have put a score into each of these categories, at the bottom of the tabulation, you're going to add all the scores together and determine your first BIBO number. This is your personal readiness index. When we look at the first group, which is the primary group, you see that it contains three categories. But these three categories are very critical to the bug in and bug out decision. Let's just take a look at one of these categories, bug out route, to see how the scoring actually works. I'm going to read you the actual verbiage from the chapter that's in this book for this category. This will give you an indication of what type of information is presented in each chapter. The book states, at least 3 different routes should be available. These routes will be 3 types: fastest, back roads, and indirect. The fastest route will be via interstate highway. Back road routing should be used if the prepper does not evacuate a bug out option before the masses. An indirect route should be used to avoid areas of destruction or civil unrest. Considerations such as choke points and terrain should be considered when choosing routes. Choke points are locations that can be closed down on a route through destruction or by government order. A bridge over a river would be an example of a choke point. Terrain might prevent or limit a direction of travel and force all survivors onto specific routes. An area bordering a coastline, river, or mountainous terrain might be susceptible to these limitations. The 3 different types of routes should be selected for every direction of travel available from the bug-in location. Each of these routes should be plotted on paper maps and stored in GPS units for easy access. Practice driving each of the routes for familiarity and also to locate points along the routes that will allow switching from one type route to another. You can see that this verbiage provides information that is required for you to have an understanding of how this category might affect your bug out. The scoring reflects the level of how prepared you are in this particular category. Notice that the lowest score in this category is a 3, and that's even if you have no route pre-planned. But you can increase your score up to a 12 if you have a variety of routes and a variety of directions planned. Remember, a higher score indicates that you are more prepared to bug out. The next group is physical attributes. In these categories, a score is developed for personal traits, knowledge and skills, and dependence. The categories in this group can be used to score information about an individual, the lowest score level of either individual in a couple, or the lowest score of any dependents in a family group. For example, under the category of fitness, one member of the group might be a marathon runner, but the scoring for that group will be based on the weaker family member that might get winded walking up a flight of stairs. Occupation and hobbies are many times indicators of knowledge and skills that might be useful in bug out scenarios. Medical training, mechanic skills, and hunting and fishing hobbies will also increase your personal readiness index and increase your ability to bug out. The final category in this group is dependents. The number of dependents in each category and the traits of these dependents that might affect your bug out ability are considered in these categories. For example, a family that has multiple children or multiple elderly adults or has dependents with disabilities will lower your personal readiness index. The last group has categories that rate your equipment and supplies. These categories determine your score not only considering that you have the equipment, but also on the portability and the type of equipment and supplies you actually have. Huge amounts of equipment and supplies that can't be transported during a bug out may be of very limited use by the suburban prepper. Let's take a look at some of the examples from this group. In the food category, having a pantry full of canned meats and vegetables stored in glass mason jars would certainly produce a higher score than not having any food stored at all, but it would produce a lower score than having a 30-day supply of easily transported and prepared freeze-dried and dehydrated meals for each prepper in the family unit. Similarly, in the water category, water stored in large 55-gallon drums will produce a much higher score than having no water stored at all. But having gravity-fed, large-capacity water filters and a survival still that can desalinate seawater would produce a higher score. Two groups are used to calculate the threat index. These groups are named geographic location and event types. The threat indicates how dangerous the crisis event is and will help you with your bug-in, bug-out decision. Here's the scoring index sheet for calculating the threat index. Once again, you can see that this is a list of all the categories that are used to calculate the threat index, and to the right of the categories is a place for you to place your score for these types of event types and geographic location. At the bottom is a place for us to add up all the scores to calculate the second BIBO number, which is your threat index. The geographic location of your bug-in site will be a major consideration for calculating the threat index. The categories in this group look at three aspects of your location: natural, society, and man-made considerations. In the natural considerations, one of the categories is the terrain category. This could greatly affect a bug-out plan if there is a presence of a choke point along the evacuation route. Bridges and limited access to interstate highways out of a location will increase your threat index. Widespread destruction and limited resources may cause outbreaks of civil unrest and rioting during a crisis event. Score levels in the society categories take into account the population density and the characteristics of the demographics of the urban population in the area most likely to affect your bug-in location. A high density of industrial complexes, especially those of the petrochemical industry, increase your likelihood of a bug-out scenario from both accidents and terrorist threats. Military bases may be targets for terrorists or for war scenarios, and their presence may make it easier for the government to declare martial law in your area and restrict bug-out movements. Large universities and colleges may have tens of thousands of unprepared students. These students will add greatly to the number of vehicles traveling on exit routes. Also, some campuses may be catalysts for protests and civil unrest and will also increase the threat index. The category in the final group, event types, are also used to calculate the threat index as the crisis event progresses, and you're going to be doing this based on the information that you have on hand. The categories are based on both natural and man-made crisis events. The workbook has an explanation of the hazards posed by each of these event types. It also has an explanation of how to mitigate these hazards and how these hazards will affect your threat index number. Calculating your threat index number during an event will indicate the severity of the danger of that event. The goal of your prepping will be to maintain as high a personal readiness index that you possibly can so that you can bug out as soon as the threat index becomes high. Waiting for an evacuation broadcast from a government agency is too late to begin your bug out option. The recommendation on when to bug out is based on the assumption that it's better to bug out 1 day too early than 1 minute too late. Using the index tables to tabulate the score in each category, we'll add those together to calculate our two BIBO numbers, the Personal Readiness Index and the Threat Index. Here's the tabulation index for the Personal Readiness Index. Here we see the tabulation index for the Threat Index. You can see that you will fill in a score for each category, and at the bottom you'll actually have a summation of these scores, which will then calculate your BIBO number called Threat Index. We're now going to take a look and see how we use the Personal Readiness Index and the Threat Index to generate a recommendation as to whether we should bug in or bug out. The decision plot chart displayed right here is used to determine that recommendation. We're going to plot both the Personal Readiness Index number and the Threat Index number on this plot chart and calculate a recommendation. The Personal Readiness Index is plotted on the horizontal scale at the bottom of the chart, and once the number is plotted, we're going to extend a line from the bottom of the chart straight up to the top of the chart. The Threat Index number is plotted along the left vertical side, and once the number is plotted, we're going to extend a line from the left side of the decision plot chart all the way across to the right. The intersection of these two lines is going to be the point that indicates a recommendation for either a bug-in or a bug-out option. If the point of intersection is inside of the blue area, that would indicate that a bug-in option is recommended. If the point of intersection of these two lines occurs in the green area, that would indicate that a bug-out option is recommended. Let's take a look at the four corners of the chart and see how those four corners differ in both personal readiness and in our threat index. The lower left corner depicts a prepper with a very low preparedness facing a very low threat event. This is everyday life for the majority of the unprepared population in America. If a crisis event is quickly resolved, the prepper would simply shelter in place and remain in his bug-in location throughout the event. As the threat increases, the prepper will move to the upper left-hand corner. This is the area of the chart that is the most dangerous for the prepper because it depicts a low preparedness level and a high threat level. The outcome of this upper left-hand corner is the Hurricane Katrina scenarios with people waving "Help Us" signs. The lower right corner depicts a prepper that's well prepared facing a low threat event. In this situation, the prepper would bug in and continuously monitor the threat for any increase in danger. As the threat event increased in danger, the prepper moves up towards the upper right-hand corner, where the prudent action would be to bug out before the mandatory evacuations are ordered. Now keep in mind that the BIBO numbers are not static. As any crisis event progresses, supplies may be added or lost, and the preparedness may change. Also, the threat may increase or decrease in danger as the situation improves or deteriorates. Also keep in mind that nothing on this chart prevents the prepper from bugging in or bugging out at any time. The key is to be prepared to do either bug in or bug out, and if the bug out option is recommended, to make a decision to bug out before the mass evacuation of the urban areas takes place. Well, that's just about all the time we have for our discussion today. We've covered a lot of information in a really short period of time. In conclusion, I'd like to just recap some of the main points that we've covered in our discussion. The first of these main points is that the suburban prepper faces challenges that are different than survivalists or homesteaders. Suburban preppers must be prepared for both a bug-in and bug-out scenario, but should focus on being prepared to bug out. And the reason for this focus is, as we've said, if a suburban prepper is prepared to bug out, they're also prepared to bug in. The workbook, your BIBO number, is going to be used to prepare a suburban prepper and help them develop and execute a successful plan. And finally, we've discussed the fact that a survival trailer is the key to preparedness for the suburban prepper. I want to thank you for joining us today on our webinar. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope that I've given you some information to think about and maybe help with your preparedness. All the information that I've talked about today is detailed and expanded upon in my book, Your BIBO Number, A Guide for the Suburban Prepper. You can order this book by going to our online store at BIBOOutfittersonline.com. That's BIBOOutfittersonline.com. And if you go there, you can order either the ebook version or the printed version of this manual. As a special offer for you joining us today on our webinar, we have a coupon code that can be inserted. The coupon code is 3 letters, in this case APN, and when you insert that, you'll receive a discount of $1 off either the printed or the ebook version. You can also visit our company website at BIBOOutfitters.com. That's BIBOOutfitters.com for more information about survival trailers and to see how you can actually construct your own survival trailer. If you'd like to give us a call direct and ask any questions, we are located in Jacksonville, Florida in the Eastern Time Zone. Please feel free to give us a call at any time. We'd be very happy to talk to you and answer any questions that you might have. Thank you again for joining us.